Alright, that is Lama Chöpa Korma Chik Geshe Thubten Rabten.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to start to look at the Lama Chöpa text, and we'll cover it through. I'll cover it through a brief presentation.
Najida Lama Chöpa ma Chike Chue de Lama Chöpa ke Chik Tishu said, and Chik Lung Shu said, Lama Chöpa ke Tishi Nyamlen Cheba, Dambo Tishu la, and the Chike Idam Wong Dorje Chichi, Lasso Wong Shuko or Wong Shu, Dene Ma, and the Lama Chöpa Ti, Soya that in the Yungore, Tishu Bala, and the Wong Shuko. So that I'm the during a share it, Jima, those who's Jenny, Yamlin Cheta, Danga to Dustina, Gomna, the Nidin, or Dorje at some motto, Chida, the Negi, Chagoma, the names answered the Washimura, I
Usually before one is led or given is led through this text, led through the Lama Chöpa, one needs to receive an initiation such as Yamantaka. But we're not going to be doing that. So therefore, rather than leading one through the text in depth, I'll be giving an introductory explanation to the Lama Chöpa practice. In my case, I received the explanation on this practice from His Holiness's former senior tutor, Ling Rinpoche. That was, of course, many years ago, and from then until now, I've kept my commitment to engage in this practice on a daily basis.
Lama Chöpa Nyamlen Cheta de Dangazu Dondala Penangazuki, the Sangha Jewel Digi, Donanama, Song Shepegi, Nangazuki, Kissin Lemrim Shebana, Lemrim Nalma, Somba Nashin, Donala, Karasumas, and Nangazuki, Kowa Dang, and Sang Kowa Treasure, Tarbada Tamji Kimbo Gopon to be Lam, and then Lam Tieshaba, there and there, Nangazuki. Do you look on the Chebata and Nagilam Yamlen Cheta, Rinpoche Chasansik, Sonja Sangha Jewel, that Yamlen Cheta game, Dodang, Niki Lam, Pan Yamlen Cheta, Rinpoche Donama, Sonja Yoruba.
Prior to coming now to where we are, about to commence looking at this text, we've covered in detail the presentation on the Lamrim, which presents the entire graduated sequences of trainings of Sutra and in brief on Tantra that one needs to engage in, what the path that needs to be cultivated within oneself so that one can progress from the suffering realms of samsara to attain the state of liberation. So that we've looked at in some detail.
Sangha Jewel Digi, the Nigi Yamlen Rimbadi, Sangha Jewel Digi, Sonshabadi, Sangha Jewel Digi, Shane, also taken, and Kronsuke, that the Loma Diga Association, Lom, Tesugi Yamlenche. Tesoma, Jukujinma, and the Ma Digi Loma Yamlenche, then the Kansuka, Tupchin, and the Komolujula Sopata, then those Yamlenche, then the March and then George Pala Atisha Yamlena. And George Pala Atisha Burley Page, and George Pala Atisha Break Capasalia Dushene, that Dodang, Niki, Yamlen Cheta Rimba, Jaju Lambre, Dushene Sunje, Denima, Sangha Jewel Denima, Sunji Cuba de Rimba, Barma Cheta Dushene, and Denima, and Denima Rimbe in the Dushene, Jeremy Chiki, and Odushene, and Donga Niki Lam Yamsulimbe Yamler, Lam Yamling Rimba Dusne, Jeremy Dushin Yamlen Nashaba, that Dushene. Gyubi Donga Nika Lam Yonsu Sube, Yamlechi Rimba, Gyubi Rimbachi, or Dushenichi Ligorwa.
And that this lineage of accomplished masters that have engaged in practices of cultivating and contemplating the various paths of Sutra and Tantra can be traced right back from the Buddha, from the present day back to the Buddha. And we go through a lineage of great lamas in Tibet, to those such as Lama Atisha, who crossed over or bridged the lands of India and Tibet, to the great masters of India prior to that, such as Nagarjuna. And this lineage from the present day extends unbroken back to the time of to Buddha Shakyamuni himself, of beings becoming accomplished on the basis of the teachings of Sutra and Tantra that Buddha Shakyamuni gave.
Dene da jerimche ya jizun jembe yang xie si ne jizun jembe yang gi an ma xie si jizun jembe da nga zu gi jerimche gi jizun jembe yang xie si da nga zu mi da mi ki xie ba na xin china ya an jizun jembe yang jerimche ma chue sun ya da an jerimche ya du su sin ya xu ya an den shun gor ba dene za da dene 대시 안저기 규바 찍체 다 되네 제일 무치게 안 지준 점배 시에스도 지준 점배야야 뉴와 안 교고 상기고 뭐 토에게 탑람지 송로 제스도 안 지준 점배야 가르송 버려서네 라민 나죠 안 라마 이담 뭐 예매도 따위 토네 두스네 냐 람냠니 좀 냠서 나고래 해야 돼 두스인다 아주 다디디 시에게 라마 쳬바 냠는 지라기 림바디 두시네 제준 점배 양게 제름 첼야 모수송 안디네 송샤바치레 디네 모소네 제준 점배 제름 첼기 두시네 제준 점배 간나와나 두시네 냠nen제 디네 엔디네 마안 제준 제름 첼양 그런 걸로 말마도 송송 안지기 냠네 두시림바진의 규제마 안두시네 두시네 냠는 림바 레바드레
The outstanding master of Tibet, Lama Tsongkhapa, was accomplished in all the trainings of Sutra and Tantra. And he had attained a state where he was able to have direct visions of Manjushri, not merely visions, but interactions. He engaged with Manjushri on a level in the same way as we are seeing each other, in really a face-to-face interaction. And he asked Manjushri to please give him a method so that he could quickly attain enlightenment. Manjushri then presented to Geshe Rinpoche a technique by which, on the basis of seeing his Lama, Yidam and Buddha as indivisible in nature, he would engage in this practice and thereby quickly attain the exalted state of enlightenment. Manjushri then taught the Lama Chöpa practice to Lama Tsongkhapa. So therefore, this practice was first brought into the world by Manjushri, who taught it directly to Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Tsongkhapa engaged in this practice on a daily basis, and he taught it on an individual basis to a handful of his students, what would be called the ear-westward lineage. Nothing was written down. He just taught a handful of his students individually this particular practice.
지난 지선 점배 양게 제름 첼 라마 쳬바디 마송베 녜라 아니 뉴와 상제게 탑람 람냠네 제 요마레베스는 요레 공아게 냠네 제 제부 다데디 마주게 제게 마게 냠네 제기 요반사 아니 가서 나주에 라면 규기 냠네 제 요반사다 뉴와 상제비 탑람 람냠네 제 탑람 요레 이나다데 다양 값수 베비 제르미체 마음비 두절이야 안지 야침보 지게 세모야 지 그신 아주 자주 람르 나 지금요 제 돈다 차상 뒤뒤에 데니기 탑람지야 마음반에 판도 최고 예버 지게 시버제는 야 제르미체 제준제배 쉬이다 제준제배 두스 나야데 두스 차기마데 녀를 매바 탑람 매바데 말이다.
I don't want to give across the impression that prior to Geshe Rinpoche receiving the presentation or being presented with the Lama Chöpa practice, that a quick method to enlightenment didn't exist in this world. Of course it did, and Lama Tsongkhapa himself was accomplished in such methods, primarily that of highest yoga tantra. But Geshe Rinpoche had as part of his motivation a wish to leave something for future generations, a condensed practice with vast meaning. He had already composed phenomenal texts such as the varying Lamrim texts, which in relatively few words encompassed the vast meaning of the Buddha Dharma. So similarly, he wanted to produce leave a technique for later generations, which would be a practice text in just a few words, but comprise a vast meaning.
And in the end, that Jerimji Madu Chine, Tangaji Choka Yigi Mareka, Jerimji Koran Yamlena, Koranzima, and Lama Koranzu Loma Zoa di Masu, and this who do Chinas Korbe Sawar Chintu Chin Yamlen Gorwa, and Chisu Benjin Lobsang Chökyi Gyaltsen, and that only done Bechi Pando Chimbo do Shanlia and Mahobana, and the Denegi Yigi Tiche. 두치네 초가로 지시 마세바이나 마오바나 되네 야지게 되네게 라도 양아 첨부도 뒤인자 두치네 마오바나 판도게 첨부야 이렇게 빼 되네게 개침부로 살았음지 안 두치네 다 초가 라마 추바세디 벤지 로상 추기기 마 고름 마서 이글 마 뒤에디 되는 마 고수 소래.
So therefore, the Lama Chöpa practice entered the world through Manjushri teaching it directly to Lama Tsongkhapa. And Lama Tsongkhapa, he one at a time later passed it on to individual students. And he passed it on to them in the same way that he had received it from Manjushri, by teaching it to them orally, and they then learning it immediately from him. And this is how it was passed on from teacher to student. So in this way, it would have been part of the ear-whispered lineage, and one would have said it was a secret text in that it was passed on directly from teacher to student, not in a broad environment, but on a one-on-one basis. Later then, the great first Panchen Rinpoche, Lobsang Chökyi Gyaltsen, he decided for the sake of future generations that this greatly beneficial practice should be more widely disseminated, and therefore what had to this point been practiced in secret, in other words, not widely taught, he wrote down so that it could be widely practiced. And so in this way, through Lobsang Chökyi Gyaltsen writing down this ear-whispered practice, in this way, the practice became written for the first time and widely disseminated.
다디 저기 리기루비기 라마 쳬비기 다 도스는 가지고 라마 쳬바라데 라마 쳬바 쳬고 지고 라마 쳬바 지고 와 지사다 라마 쳬바라데 라민넨주스 라민나주 냠네 라민나주스고 라민나주기 냠네스고 라민나주 라민나주스는 게 라마다 이담 상기디 오 예메류 따위 토네 아니 두세 꼼지네 아니 지게 냠네지야기 림바치 차고로 지사 라마 쳬바스네 상기스나 라마 결혼 이담스나 라마 결혼 진짜 직 차상 라마 인세 라마 오 인세데 라마다 오 예메도 되네 쳬바 푸이 아니 조사 집자지야기 인자 걸 챙고라래 지게 라마 쳬바사 직 두스네 첸 송다 디로와 라민나주 시고도 라민나주 레고레 나주 람네디 소레 날라는 아주 제지도네 배 신내디 소레 다 조와스네 가르다 주고스네 유티네 실하송데서 아고 날주어세 지난 날주어 랍네 유디레 제지도 네네 안데 지기 실하송데도 냠네지야들 시고레 지난 라민나주 지난 라마다 이담 상기 송오 예메도 제지도 삼다제 안데 지지야들 시고레
The Lama Chöpa Puja, the Lama Chöpa practice that we have is that of the Golok tradition. So each of the Tibetan traditions has their own, and ours has Lama Tsongkhapa as the principal figure. But the practice across the traditions is the same in that one with the way that it's by fully qualified practitioners, the way they would engage in it is with a union of calm abiding and meditative insight. They would see their Lama as indivisible in nature from the Yidam and the Buddha. So all three being inseparable in nature. And holding that, this understanding, this realization, single-pointedly, they then would go engage in the practice of making offerings. So to translate the title, so Lama, we know as Lama or Guru, and then Chöpa is to make offerings. So therefore, it's the practice of making offerings to the Lama.
Dorje Chichi Nyamne, Sangha Dubi Nyamne, Deshugu Nyamne, Nanjume Nyamne, Chasa, Tisu Chasa, Lamina Ju Nyamne, Lamina Cho, Lamina Ju Nyamne Chizare, Chisa Lama Idam Sango, Yemi Tayu Tone, and Nyamne Choka, Chisa Lamina. Chisa Dang de Cho, Dorje Chichi, Dantisune, Lamina Ju to Scochoa to Manga Chagro, that did Lama Chöpa to do Dile, Sig Nyung, Chagro, do Barage. Geshe Thubten Sangha Jewel Desho Siadi Beji Mambo Tsu Manga Yor watches and Giavara Chagor. That did Lama Chöpa did Dura Chagore. Yungara Chagor, Duba Chagora. The Lemrim Chishon Sumiorwa, Lemrim Chibola de Mahorwa, Lemrim Dudu Ledu Chunjun Yuma, Dunacha, Shu Yuma, Dinashi, the Lemina Jose de Desho, and the Jigje, and the Sangha Jewel and Chohat Sig Mangorwa, Mangmangor, Lama Chöpa Yuma, Says Lemina Judius, Duba.
When one compares the size of this text, of this practice, to say the practices of the three principal deities of Yamantaka, Heruka, and Gyosamaja, one sees that it is a far briefer text. So just in the same way as we could say with the Lamrim, that there are Lamrims of varying tradition, various lengths, but they are certainly an abbreviated presentation that contains the entire meaning. So too, the practice of the Lama Chöpa, or the Guru Puja, this contains the meaning of the Yamantaka, Heruka, or Gyosamaja practice.
Lama Chöpa Sidi, and the Ganachire, Kajele, Rangi, Duhelia, Lama Idam Sanye, Songo, Yeme de Davi Kone, Yeme de Daje, Delia, Chevopuya, and Delia, Sondepjea, and Mazuki, Dene Margin, and Dijene, and DJ like Harsosan, Panchen Rinpoche Nyamne, one of the Panchen Rinpoche Nyamne, Dene Nagi, Kisinama Shuba Nashi, Yerina, Zorim said, Denigasa, Denigpadu, Nyamne got Lama Soya Tap Delia, and Lama Idam or Yeme David Soya Tap Delia, Chevopu, and so Sodapje, Chevopu, Sodipje, then Margin and Ma, Mitiki. The DGV Nyamlen to Harchiverson, Sanjo Govatala, Nyamne, Kisinama Lumrishavan Jibade, Chazan Pajan Chanju Sim Yukunel, La the Pajan to Nyamne, Dene, and the new and Yobasan Jet, and Jerem not Zorimgi, Nyamne Jet Chagoradi, and sometime Comedi did it at the Macomedi.
The essence of the meaning of the practice of Lama Chöpa is that one first sees one's Lama, Yidam, and the Buddha as indivisible in nature. Having generated this mind, one then makes offerings and supplications to one's Lama, now who one is seeing as indivisible in nature from one's Yidam and the Buddha. So having made offerings and supplications, one then engages in the practices that lead to enlightenment. And you'll remember from the Lamrim text we've been covering, because this is a practice of the Mahayana, these will now be the practices of the six perfections, so the sutra practices, and then the tantric practices of the generation and completion stage. So again, seeing one's Lama, Yidam, and Buddha as indivisible in nature, one makes offerings and supplications, and then engages in the practices that will lead to enlightenment. First, those are the sutra, the 6 perfections, thereafter those of Tantra, generation and completion stage.
Lama Chöpa, Nyamlen Chebala, and Jalia, Dambola Masona Rimba, Sumli Gore, Dambo Carson, Mondro Sajik, Mondro said the Lama Chöpa, Yamin Chelia, Majinelia, Niela Carcar, said, Mondro Saje. Then Wishi said, when Yamin Chia goes to Moyan, Wishi. That jukes do that, Wishing Yamin Heavy Chela, and Yamin Heavy Chelang as a Gaoada, and then Wajaya, that is Jukes, just Mondro. And then when she Jusum said this or Dennis. Casa Jorum or Jusum or Jova said, Niele, wishing Yamnachi, Niele, Jova, some Caracarachi said, Jova the chair, didn't wishing Yamnachi the chair. Then Yamnachi Savage Carji wasn't Gavati Yomoaja that the chair. It's a Jorum or Jusum said Anzuki that Yamlin Caracheva in there, Jongo Jusum water, Lamrimin, Yamlan Cheva, the ticket some do away, not just Jongo Jusum or that.
Whatever practice a meditative practice one engages in, whether it's a daily Lamrim meditation or whether one is in retreat doing Lamrim or deity retreat, or one's doing a Lama Chöpa practice, they all have the same 3 divisions. First being the preliminaries, thereafter the actual practice or the main practice, and then the conclusion.
Dine that down to the Joa de la Carriore city down to near the Carchore city, that Jibari, Lama Chöpa, Yamin Chebala, near the Kagure city, down to that Dambo on the near the Cargorson, and Kunoda, Dirwa, Givicha, Carchibin, Kunoda, Jamdro Semki said, also Kunoda, Jamdroda, Semki Kunia, large and the Tapachim between Yamin Chebala, and Jamdroda Kunzus Casore, Semki. You couldn't large in Yamnachi watch hours. Dene Zada, Dene Yamnachavala, and the Kisinima Lamrim, the Shevana Chivari, down board, and the Lama Chöpa, Yamlin Jeju, Yamnachi or somebody, and Delia, Nehachi Dorchawa, setting as the Dakamba Zangmarashite, and Delia Kusutuki, and Jamia the Yuvan Jam, and Delia Chopa Yumeba, Chopa the Yaboje Sham, and Dosche, and then Danger Yaboshi. And there is something you didn't say, and there are society that Louis Namna should do this, on Dustin, Masam Daje, Casa Dustin, the Duedi, Dambo. It is additional the Louis Namna should do this, she saw it. There's a Kuzon to you, near Hachi Dorcheva, Kuzon to you, Den Jamba, Chova Yumeba, Shamba, then they all do the Louis Namna should do, then you can. Chopa said, on Dustin, on Dustin,
Of those 3 divisions, preliminaries, main practice, and conclusion, so those you will be very used to from your own daily meditation or retreats you've attended here. And similarly, when we look at the preliminaries, these we will know well already from the Lamrim meditations that I've led you through. Every meditation starts with the generation of the Mahayana motivation, namely refuge and bodhicitta. And moreover, each meditation session, one would start with the 6 preparatory practices that we looked at 3 years ago at the start of our previous Lamrim text. The first one cleans one's room and arranges the shrine and sets out offerings, then sits in the sevenfold position, takes refuge, generates bodhicitta, and then engages in the preliminaries to the meditation. So those 6 steps we covered previously, but the primary preliminary is the generation of refuge and bodhicitta.
Give you startup Kukureche, give you startup Susugi Dunia, and give you the startup Kukureche, just Susugi Dunia, and a Jike Shuchi, Denege, Sangha Chempo Gigi Pata, Shuchi Chempo Chiova, some Dan Delia, and Karjos and a startup Tantim. And a Karsore, that's Susurangi Lama, Susulama Yimba, Susuranga Lamati. Yimbachitel, and more than so Lama Yimba. Number de la Manzuki, that Jeremiches, and the Lama Chöpa and Sada, Jeremich Nambik. And the Chökyi, so and the Pensha, go and the Jig, Labai, Yumba Yamsha Chin, and the Jiga, La Cha Ye, Chuchi Yamsha Chin, on Duschine, and the Jeremiches sat up, and the Dunlia and Jeremichigi, Gui, Dunel Tugalia, and the Masanya Jim the Yuba sat up, and the Tugalia, and the Gans Jiki Yoba Duschine, sometimes Lama Sedi, Sosuki, Satavi, Jeremichi, the Ranga Lama the chair, and the Dul Ulia, Tumba Sangi Jun Satayedi, Sangi the chair. Di Tugalia and Dorje Chan, Yawadosha, the Yidam Chesa, Lama Yidam Sanyo Sungatin, Sortesa, more Yerme to said, Delia, so Dushin Sata Sata Kuresunga. And Madame Chayumba Dushe, Chayeba Dushin, sure, Regide, Chayuba Yamja, Yaba the Chuji, on Dushin and some Danaticoris.
Within the preparatory practices, the fourth was the visualization, and in this context, we have visualization of the refuge of the refuge visualization. So here, one visualizes before oneself on a lion throne, one's lama in the aspect of Geshe Rinpoche. So, because we're looking at the practice of Lama Chöpa, in this context, for the refuge field, we also visualize Lama Tsongkhapa before us, but seeing him, but whilst the aspect is of Lama Tsongkhapa in nature, it is our teacher. Then Lama Tsongkhapa is sitting with the mudra Genla showed before, with his left hand in his lap and his right hand at his heart. Then at Geshe Rinpoche's heart is Buddha Shakyamuni. And at Buddha Shakyamuni's heart is Vajradhara or Dorje Chang. So here already in the visualization, one is seeing one's Lama, Yidam and Buddha as indivisible in nature. In that, one's visualizing Geshe Rinpoche, but knowing that in essence it's one's Lama, at his heart is Buddha, and at Buddha's heart is Vajradhara, representing one's own Yidam. So already in the refuge field, one is visualizing one's Lama, Yidam, and Buddha as indivisible in nature.
Lama Chöpa, Tsikma, Duendu Kabla, Tadenma, Duenang Rimbani Yongre, Trotano, East Chekore, Tanganzu Numbun Dinma, Pejinalaya, Karayorasan, Dambo, Deshingalera, Lama Ha said, on Tuschene, Numbun Chidane, that Dusiare. In a Tanganzu Dansa, Jajik. Kashege Tambo and Dishing Ale, and then Madus Parim to the war. And Gabriela and the Ajing and Sopu Kabla, Dishing Ale, Madumba, Nielia, and the Rafka Kasim Chabang, Nielia says it, and then the Ma Pardo and the Kasori Manimachin and Lamzamo Lama, Energy of the Lama, you said Di Bardo, and the Madu, Didun Sevichela, and the Dishing Alamatu, Dishing Alamatu, on Dustin the Dunaji, Dunamida, the new word. And the Lama Chöpa and the Rafka is in Chopa, the Yellow.
In terms of engaging then in the recitation, then there are two techniques, two ways that this is done. So you can see with your text before you, especially those of you who come to the Lama Chöpa practice here, you'll immediately see that there is a difference. So here in your text, the first verse is numbered number 1. So this is the way that the text was composed, and this is one way that the recitation is done, starting with the first verse, "Within great bliss, I rise as my Guru Yidam." The second way that it can be done is starting with the second verse, "From the state of an exalted white virtuous mind." And that is the way that we usually do it when you do Puja here. And where one starts with the second verse, then verse number 1 comes after verse number 6. So the way we normally do it in Puja here is verses 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 7, 8, and so forth. So there are these two methods.
Lama Chöpa Jamdro Simgeji and Nuji Jini Lava, Nuji Jamdro Simgeji, then the Nuji Jini Lava, Nuji Jini Lava, Nuji Jini Lava, Chegor. Just not that, Tang to get Dambo, then to get the Chicken Chopa Hashin Chevaina, that Rabga Kisin Chembo said nearly Chevaina, and Delia, and what is the Rabga Kisin Chembo. Nanyele, Dada Kanyam, Magan Senjanam, Denichi, Chanchu Yimbo, Lama Conjusuma, Jasutro, Namuguru, Namada, Nama Sangha, Ya, Sachi, or de Dela, and the give you set up chair, Ya Jamdrucheta, the Sungorwa.
Before one engages in the core of the practice, so looking at your book, you can see the core of the practice starts in the middle, page 3. But before one does so, one is engaging in the preliminaries. And the preliminaries include then the generation of refuge and bodhicitta, and blessings of of beings throughout the world and the world itself. So the one technique, as was mentioned, and which is the one that we do in Puja, which is to start with the second verse, from the state of an exalted white virtuous mind. So here we're generating refuge and going straight into bodhicitta as well. So that is the one technique, like we do in Puja, starting with the second verse. And here you can see from reading the words that one is generating refuge and bodhicitta right at the outset.
That the Rabgar Gesin Chimba Ngani ne Sidu Dada Kanya Magan Senjanam, Dinechi, Lama Conjusuma Jasuro, Sidu, Donagar Solar Rabgar Gesin Chimba Ngani le, Sidanga Lama Soshin Kasore, Jabu Sate by Jatsat of Chianganzugi Telia, Japsutrella, Dambong and Kulon de Kugurvada, that Kulon de Karesan Rabgar Gesin Chimbas and Rabgar and Page, Shidone. Chikao Shushi, is a cow, Ladu, Rapka Ladu, same cow Segure, similar, Bene Semjan Tamjig Dundal, Kori Dungal Jagi, Jaduga, and Limrim Nasia did, Nejun Johnson, Jansusim, Jansusim, Nejun, Jansusim, the Chagor, Jansim Chagore. Danganzuki, Delia, Ringers and the Kiwu Chumi Lamirim, Tumo Lamirimba, Kiwu Tinda Tumo Lamir, Kiwu Chimbil Lamirimba, says some Danda Chegor, Chesa, the Rapker said, Gun Tam Gun meeting, Pishalia. Pembe being a Kori Dunga Tala, the Treasure Drogo, there, Semjan Tam Je Kori Dungale, Drogo, the Droa Jade, me, Semja Tamjiki Dala, and Kori Dungala, Droa Chiki, Disa, me, Semja Tam Sayokoban, Toba Chiki, and Sebege, Janju Semja, Rapkar Kesin Chembangani Le, Denege gave some J. Dene gave some Jene, and Dada Kanya Maga Senjan, and that gave some Tamjiki Don Sayokoban, Toba Chiki, said the Carrelane. So Rana, Semjan Tamje Dunda Yisu Dana, Kanyam Semjan, Kanyam Sud Namgada in Semjan Tamjik or Semjan Tamjik Dunda Yinse.
First presenting the method like you do in Guru Puja, in Lama Chöpa, the bi-monthly Puja, or the fortnightly Puja rather, where we start with the second verse. So you see from the first line then, from the state of an exalted white virtuous mind. This then, the meaning of the word white here is that it is a mind freed of stain, of fault or pollutant. And it refers to, this virtuous mind refers to all the virtuous minds that are included within the varying practices, those which are shared with a practitioner of initial capacity, those which are shared with a practitioner of intermediate capacity, as well as those of a practitioner of supreme capacity. All of those virtuous minds are referenced here in the first line, and then again, white means that it's free of stain or fault. And then immediately in the second line, we see reference to the purpose, which is for the sake of all mother sentient beings.
Denigi Tsing Digi, Carduors, and Danazogi, 60 Dini Naloya, Givu Chungi Lamji Rimba, Givu Jingi Lamji Rimba, Dine Jamni Chanshu Sem Di Dingor, Chesa, Rapkar Kesen Chembos, the Semjan Tamje, and then answer that Ma, and Kasori, Seti, Dungandu Dungal Tro, Drogo, Danger, Mahobana, Diensan. Denju Milu top Chen Yamnache, Diensambo, Toku, Sembe, some died, and the Givu Chung the Tumo Lamirimba, as the case in Lamrin the Chepana. That the Neja, the end of Semjan Tam Kasore, Korea Dunga de let the Targo should direct the Nigi top to Batilia, Korea Dunga le Tarbigi, Lam Yamla Kora Dunga, George Tarba said about the Jigimidu and Bege, some time Jije, the Rapkar Kesin Chimbo, Dinale, Sem Sumgaligua, Rapkar Kesim Chim. Dina Yada. 학벌도 안돼야 랑 직부 코를 주어 지금 샘전 탐지 디고 샘전 탐지 되기는 되나 샘배 삼로 잠바콤 샘전 탐지 동안에 자나 샘배 니지콤 되네 샘전 탐지 동안에 자와데 네 지기 샘배게 삼로지 하삼 삼다 디인장에 샘전 탐지게 된다 산지고보 토벌지기 샘배 예 산지고보 토벌지기 샘배 삼다에도 다단 칸예 마겐 샘젠 남 샘젠 탐지게 된다라 너사요고 토바지 인습이다 디가서다 먼저 접수 줘야기 군롱의 시고래 군롱의 시고래.
These first two lines then, where one is cultivating one's motivation, here already in dependence on one's extensive prior training, one is generating the varying motivations of the three scopes of beings. In other words, the motivation of a practitioner, the motivation relating to the training shared with a practitioner of initial capacity, in that one is determined to create the causes for ongoing good rebirths, as well as the motivation that is, the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, where one is determined to abandon the afflicted minds, the causes that keeps one trapped in the suffering realms of samsara and attain liberation from samsara, and one is generating the motivation related that comes from the unique trainings of a practitioner of supreme capacity, where one's determination to attain liberation from the afflicted minds that keep one bound in samsara is within the context of doing this so that one can become the most skilled of guides to help others achieve the self-same state. So within this generation of one's motivation is a rejection of the aspiration of the goal of individual liberation, seeing it as not suitable, as unacceptable. Rather, one is generating love and compassion for beings, generating compassion for them lost in suffering, not even knowing that they continue to create causes for ever more pain. Generating love, wanting them to be freed of such a state and abide in lasting happiness. And moreover, generating the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility, where one takes it as one's own determination or one's own responsibility to ensure that each being is guided to the achievement of their own liberation. So here, in these first two lines, one is already generating an extensive Mahayana motivation.
다 징게 남게 녀중다 대수삼다 잠니제 삼다 하선남다 대공발에 때네 샘제 탐지 상주고보 토비 토바지 인세베 자주 샘게 와서 제자 셈라고 계신 첨보해야 돼 기회 셈 첨보 자주 셈 군에 랑제 안디 셈게 말이서 안디 셈게네 가르치가 셈제 대야 셈제 탐제 동화다 대비 치르도 안에 가르치고 셈제 탐지 동화 다다선 소소라다 소소라랑 셈젠 탐제를 펜버두비에치도 소소라랑 사지고마 토구스 다세 근데 셈젠 탐쟁이 최된데 셈젠 탐제 코알이야 로고도 세베 다다 셈젠 탐제게 제자다 디치도 안다다 안 델레 껴비 뉴버드 수요레스네 대신 안쪽이 듄이라 안 초션 공부 라마 이담 상예 뭐 예마치 코론을 요레스 베껴비 딱 껴비 뉴버드 콘솔 요 코론 껴비 뉴버드 요레스 베셈 딩기니 이셰바지 겹수 좋아서 지난 내내 지시 장주 님보바 라마 권조스나 겹수 좋아서네 디링네 디링네 송제 내 상제게 그 마토바서 댕네스도 디링네에서 올다 디링네 지시 장주 님보바서 상제고 바 마토비 바도 아니 라마 권조스나 라마 이담 상제체 뭐 예메바 델리아 아니 권조스나 겹수 좋긴 세베 다델리아 겹르치긴 세베 겹르디 시거다.
In the first line, we have the word, so still we're looking at verse 2, the word exalted. The word here, exalted, this refers to the Mahayana, refers to the trainings of beings of supreme or greatest capacity. So therefore, we see the reference, knowing the meaning then of this word exalted, we see immediately here that this refuge that is being generated is one of the Mahayana, because this word exalted refers to bodhicitta. So we're going for refuge, but within the context of the Mahayana. So literally the word exalted is the word for great, as in great scope or great vehicle. And in the second line, we see the reference to all sentient beings, and it's expressed as I and all infinite old mother sentient beings. Here it's being presented in a very emotive way to draw attention to the close and intimate relationship that we share with all sentient beings. And the word I is being emphasized because we are generating the bodhicitta motivation where one takes responsibility for the welfare of all mother sentient beings. And then we see in the next two lines, from this moment until our supreme enlightenment, I go for refuge to the gurus and the three precious gems. Here, we understand this now in the context of our visualization. We're visualizing our Lama in aspect of Geshe Rinpoche, with Buddha Shakyamuni at his heart and Vajradhara at his heart. So we're seeing our Lama, Yidam and Buddha as indivisible in nature, and we're turning to them for refuge, for protection, knowing that they have the skill to guide us and through us all beings to the attainment of lasting enlightenment.
Zanda dine Lama idam sangye ngo yeme da delia semjen tamje korwe dungale gyobi nyuba de konso gyokore sibi ichi sem dingi ichi jeba de jamrore. Da dine ichi jene ngana joge delia ane jamro 장가 쌓아야 되래. 지나다가 저기 부지나 라마라 교수시 상계라 교초라 견도라 교수시 해야 돼. 뭐 쌓아야 돼. 데네 산스크리트도 안나무 그룹에서 라마라 교수시 그러 나무 부다야스 상계라 교수시 다마야스 최대라 최라 교수시 안나마 상가야스 견도라 교수시 해서 도스치나 저기 델야 사다 델야 아니 지게 라마라 교수지 라마라 교수지 디네 장가사 안 디네 사냥 상gel라 교수 상gel라 두스치네 장가사 온두스치네 용고 직사다 디네 용고래 아양 지 뎁질이야 라마라 교수 상gel라 초라 교수 겐노라 교수 라마라 상gel라 초라 교수 겐노라 교수 두스치네 사 용고래 다 디니기 대바체지도 제비에 되네 다 델레티브 뉴바데 라마이담 건조스면 껴그리 샘베게 샘 딩기 이체제 델레 소와 제치도 되네 안는 두스치네 네 잠도 장가 쌓아야 됐어 차고래.
The third verse, we have the refuge formula here, which is recited in Sanskrit. Namo Gurubhya is refuge to the Guru. Namo Buddhaya, refuge to the Buddha. Namo Dharmaya, refuge to the Dharma. And Namo Sanghaya, I go for refuge to the Sangha. So here, one has now generated refuge in the second verse. And refuge is recognizing that one's object of refuge, here which is one's Lama, who is indivisible in nature, from the Yidam, one's Yidam and Buddha, one knows from deep within one's heart that he has the ability to protect one. What does protection mean? Through relying on his instruction and cultivating what he teaches one within one's own mind, that protects one. So in this way, through receiving and following guidance, one receives or attains protection from suffering. So with deep, heartfelt faith of trust and conviction, one has then generated the mind of refuge. So the mind of refuge is a heartfelt trust and conviction that one's object of refuge has the ability to guide one to spiritually develop and in this way attain protection from suffering. With this generated within oneself, refuge generated within oneself, one goes into the recitation in the third verse. So here, especially when you're doing the practice on your own, you can recite any number of recitations. One would recite each one individually with many recitations. So Namo Gurubhaya and count again and again on one's mala before moving to Namo Buddhaya, counting on one's mala before moving to Namo Dhammaya, etc. In this way, one every day could count many refuge prayers like this.
And then dalang anjugi the doing leya, soso doing leya, and give you set up. The nature the satavi jela, and then anjugi kuno janshu semji kunela, and ya sat and the doing leya give you the sat up in that day. Now doing a soso that you be soso delia, soso in your delia, semjan tam je and yoba, mebache or regile. Semjan tamji meba, yoba mebache, semjan hamje da, semjan tamje. 소수기 미 넘버로치 미 넘버로치 미나 신체 수부로 미나 쉬어가지 네 고소기 지게 소소랑 동아 녀야지 셈제 소소랑 두가 가리나 되는 용시 바치래 넘버드 미 넘버로치 삼다 제가 두치네 제가 소수기 뒤인기다 껴유디기 소소lep에 제와 첨배시우 진마시도 요비치 두치네 삼다 나 소소라랑 된마 소소라랑 게다 움셀마선 소소라랑 제 조어지 고치서 소소라지 대sem제 탐제 좀 유해바지 차상기야 뉘기 안 깨비디기 야 아니 대바제지도 제제데 되네야 안 두치네 대바제지도 제제 유해바 뭐바지 안 되네 자다 나 동아 다달을 깨비 뉴바디 대sem제 탐제 코에 동아를 깨비 뉴발라 먹고 껴그리 셈비 이시제 대바 이시제네 되네 아주 겸러스 장사제 두시네 장가사로 나 장가사네 당한주게 라마를 교수치에서 지부사 안 되는 마사네 되네야 뒤지 뵙자세 제저르제 지상 두시네 배소와 대변도 안다 라미기 꿀마 안에서 구송투기 연대의 인발라 남바디 아주 뒤지 용어 나바시마 뵙제 안나가서 셈젠 랑다 셈전 탐정하도 차상 델리아 셈전 탐지기야 류마 슈제 안 류기 나자 셈기 동아 탐지 징 안 셈기 예만 디바사시비 디바 찬자 당송 서베 다 차상 상무수에 살송 셈비기 디바스 다송 서베 메바시고 예제 두스네 메바시고 예제 안에 안 디제사냐 상제라 교수 체예사 되네야 상제라 교수 체제 마사르 코로산 야디 두지 펩샤제야다 야디 겐드레 캡수체사 아니 쳬레 캡수체사 딘마데야 디젤레 두지 펩샤 디진한제 나 겐드레 캡수체사 두스체사 디젤레야 케비엔 마 두지 파 펩랑글룰 셈자 탐지글룰 슈네 아니 디바디 디바탐지 장송 셈비게 두스치네 메바체 공고레세 나 캡브르체 당기 삼다탄 디레 나디나 신당아 저게 레레레 마제바나 상jel라 교수 라마라 교수 상jel라 쇼라게 겐돌라 교수체 세네마 장가사전 제리안 차산 뒤집에서 제시나 리고레세 된 숨도와
Before oneself, we have the visualization as mentioned earlier, and in one's heart one has given rise to deep heartfelt faith. Moreover, in terms of one's visualization, surrounding us, we should have the feel that all sentient beings, without exception, surround us. And they are joining us in the recitation of the refuge formula. We are playing the role of the chant leader. And all sentient beings around us are in human aspects similar to ourselves. We don't visualize them with physical ailments and so forth. Rather, we just a simple visualization of beings who look similar to ourselves, surrounding us, but understanding that it represents each and every single old mother sentient being. And we play the role of being the chant leader, bearing in mind we're doing this in the context of refuge and bodhicitta, with the goal of bodhicitta, the goal of enlightenment, which is the objective of bodhicitta. So here we have the aspiration that I will lead all beings to enlightenment. And here, all around me, on either side, behind and in front, I am leading them in the accumulation of virtue, connecting them with the flawless Lama, Buddha, and Yidam. And with this understanding, we engage in the recitation. And a key component of engaging in this refuge practice is that the mind of refuge should arise from deep within. It should be heartfelt. That one has a deep conviction that through the teachings that come from one's Lama, and one applying it within one's own mind, or cultivating them in one's own mind, one will spiritually develop and thereby transform suffering and attain protection, liberation. It's those realizations that are what protects us in the actual refuge. So here we need this deep conviction. And in this way, we can engage in the recitation with conviction, wanting to strengthen our connection ever more so, and thereby speed our practice for the sake of surrounding suffering mother sentient beings. And in the visualization then that is done from deep within one's heart, one visualizes, as one is, for example, first reciting Namo Gurubhaya many times, one visualizes light rays in the form of, or nectar in the form of light rays, flowing from one's Lama into oneself and all sentient beings, purifying us of all physical ailments, mental anguish, and all negativities on our continuum too. And we engage in this recitation with sincerity and conviction, and moving after many recitations, first of Namo Gurubhaya, then to Namo Buddhaya, and so forth. And the visualization will be similar throughout.
āngā dunga tātāla gyōpi nūpa di gyamnya tāti ngā dungi sōshen lam gyamnya kuñchō sumba tila yōre sida jizāng gyamnya kuñchō sumya sāngye kuñchō, chūyo kuñchō, kētyōng kuñchō sumba rwa jizāng dungi sōshen kāsa gyamyo sēdi bīgil lāma tāng sāngye digi sāngye kuñchō che kōrānsu tūkyūla yōbīgi tā jīgi tiyal ngā su kōk lam tāng lamden digi chūyo kuñchō chakare dini kētyōng kuñchō lāma kōrānsu 파베 간사인장 게르고죠. 이가 순간 상대 책으로. 그래서 당한주 동아탈에 교배 군조숨 교불이 세비 교그 누바 열에 군조 교그리 가랑가서 코르 동아타달레야 교불이 세야지 삼다데 이치제디 가르람나 이치제다데 한 나랑주기 될이야 되어서 삼다나지 개발셔래. 나랑 삼다 교불이 세야지 나랑주 가야 맞지바지 아니 kunjusum digan ben jalal masun jiksemjen chunal masade bayina aning gyogure sede ya miji ya ji chunal tianje ya dyansha bayina da chu gangal gyobaru wa dina jing azu koyu dungale ne dio badi kunjusum digi azu ya jasin ya sanje sele geshe grebesne denege ichi chede di marwa da azu delias gyogure se ichi chedan del dyos chabar yore.
And just to say a little bit more on the final line in the second verse, which is go for refuge to the gurus and the three precious gems. So generally, the objects of refuge, and you'll know this from our previous teachings, are the three jewels of the three gems of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Here in our visualization, we're relating to our Lama as being the three jewels, in that in nature, he is the Buddha. But he is in the aspect of an Arya being, and therefore he is a Sangha. And moreover, he has exalted realizations on his continuum. Therefore, he is also the Dharma Jewel. So our Lama is all three jewels. With this in mind, we turn to him for refuge, knowing that he has the ability or power. So the word in Tibetan can be translated as either ability or power to protect. And here let's talk then a little bit about the protection that refuge provides. Because usually when you think of the word protection, we'll think of, for example, if we see an insect drowning in a pool of water, we'll reach down with our hand and scoop that insect out. And this way we will protect the insect from dying. So that is not the understanding of protection in the context of refuge.
지산디 탑람 사이에 때디 코롱기 냠용 토네 코롱이 냠마 냠렌제 냠용 토네 근데 아주 만호와 스팅이레스 지산 탑람 양다 봐 띵이레스 디야 띵기요 바딩 하나도 탐에 야다 봐 코롱이 킹거래 디 캠바딩 아주 띵이레스 태좀요 말해서 도과요 말해서 그래서는 코롱기 마텐을야 차사 냠용요래 안테게 샬레 제와 아주 동할레 자두기 제와 셔어스 그냥만 내고 제와 공부하래 지상 제와요래 지상 아주 동할 탈두기 제와요 바제 델레 동화요 탑에 탑람 디되게 람디 코론 킹거요 바자 디띵 띵그레 세비게다 디 띵그레스 델레 태좀 자와기네 도바기네 맹게 땡땡 띵그레 세비 이체디 당아주 상기 컨트롤에 이시체디 상기 권체가 아주 동안에 세비에 탑람디 마노와 마초와 땡그리 세비 이시체디 디레다 이시디에제레 다 상기 권초라 내가 저게 동안에 껴그리 세비 이시체디 겹당데 간스 껴그리선 데니 땡그리 탑람 땡그리에서 다 탑람 땡여도 갑라 마한수디 탑람데 냠는 지류 마한수게 삼나땅 베지 냠는 지류 갑라 로드 수지그레선 개념권 쪽이 지기래서 딱 개념권 쪽 호롱 쪽이 냠년주 냠내고 냠년주 냠녀요. 제가 델야 로제 개념권 쪽 지기래서 때 맞아야 태좀 균해요 말해서 도고 균해요 말 땐 지기래 선배게다 개념권 쪽라 이시제디 디리다 이때바 이시제 주제바 난 안다디 가르쳐 버렸으나 데니게 상기기 땡기 땡기래서 이시다 개념권 쪽이 알아디 냠년주 로 지기래서 이시 땜부치게 이시제 지난 두스 냠는 제바이나 나랑게 두스 냠는 디 건조기 상기 땜바디 나랑게 탑런 땜바데 나랑게 냠는 제 기둥 것이 로제 딩에 냠는 제발에 때네 나랑게 녀모바 차사 빵비기 빵바디 니 토그레스 때네 토그레스 데 토그레스 디 톱소나 코알 조레스 다 나도 코알에 껴바래다 코알에 껴바래스 지난디 네 상기 때베 띵기데 세비기 탑람 만호가 띵그리에서 이시다 아니 델러 냠는 제발 기둥고 주로 땡땡 지기리에서 이시 잠아지 다디 냠는 제발 때네 아니 나랑 녀모바 탑쳐서 빵배 빵보 곡때 톱그레에서 비게 디이시 해야 되다 디이시 해야 돼 제산 냠로서 디소다 디베다 타주심 딩기 디이시 해야 되라 다 냠로서 오다 가질래 건조스미 동아타들 껴그리 셈 이시제데 다도 숨디레 두스전에 이시제다래
So the mind of refuge is one where we have complete, so to use the literal words, complete faith in the ability of the Buddha to protect us. So what does this mean? Because in our everyday way of speaking, it really does sound like we expect the Buddha to be able to reach down and help us like we would help an insect drowning in water. We would expect the Buddha to be able to pick us up and take us to a God realm. That is not the meaning at all. So that's how the words sound, but that's not what should arise in our mind. Rather, in terms of the Buddha Jewel, we have complete conviction or trust, which is another way to translate the word faith, because faith in English has particular connotations. So the meaning really is one of conviction or trust. And in relation to the Buddha Jewel, that conviction or trust is that in the Buddha Jewel as being the teacher of the complete method based on his unmistaken experience that leads to enlightenment. So the conviction or the trust, i.e. the faith that one has in the Buddha Jewel, is that one has no doubt in him as a teacher of the complete and unmistaken method based on his experience. Secondly, then, in terms of the Sangha Jewel, here the Sangha Jewel are those who, again, different ways to express it, are aids or companions or who help us in our spiritual journey. So whilst we are embarking on our spiritual journey, these are our skilled helpers, those who aid us and assist us, having complete conviction or trust in the Sangha Jewel is the mind of refuge towards them. And then thirdly, the Dharma Jewel. So the Dharma Jewel that one has complete conviction and trust in other words, faith, is the quality of realization that will be developed in our own continuum, independent on following the guidance of our lamas, where we cultivate their teachings in the way they present, and in this way, through the attainment of realization, we abandon the afflictions together with their seeds and attain cessation of suffering, liberation. The Dharma Jewel itself is true cessation. So here, our faith and our faith or our trust and conviction is in our own realizations that we will be cultivating in our own continuum.
Jamroche Yishi said, did it that do some down under Mado. That do Conjo Sumgi, Sanjigia, Marazo, Sosugi, Yamlinga Majena, and Sanjigi Duchinia, Tabico, like Kigri, and some Dana, indeed, Yoamerwa, on Duchine, did it. The names are Marazugi, that Conjo Sumlia, Japsutangi, Jimbaruchi did it. Then I did weapon the Donanibola, Sanjela Yishi. Thubten Rabten raw chigres and big chichiana, getting go to Lishia DJ. That in it, Jamrogi, some data, do you want to do some data, the Jamro combats or Denigita is Sechidu, Jesha Denigi, Sechidu, Jedenia, Arzugi, Dangazugi, and the Lama Chöpa Chöla Gyaltsen said, that Denigi, Yane, Yadu, the Mipa Sechidu, Jamro Conjusum Denik Yoguri, some Ishi Deva Timbo, Delia, Jamro Conjusum, but Ishi Sechidu, the Mipa Shana Mayan, Sechidu, Neje, Lama Chöpa Gyaltsen said, and then Namaguru Benam, Buddha, Namadara, Namasangaya, and Yane, Yandu, City, Yodu, and Arzugi, Jamros, Janga Sagor, Kanaba, Siktipa, Jangasadu, Duhensemdi, and the Jamno Conjusum Yiche, Sechidu, Gine, Kablanga, the Gom Sigua, the Gom Sidu, Yamne, Gom, Dangazugi, Chiegom da, Jogom Yina, that has the Denma, Yamne Sidu Kablada, and Chio thought that the Tisuchasa, Jogom Galma, Jogom Gala to Gore, just I didn't say, but Sechidu, the same Dipa, things that Sechidu, the Shalamaya, do, the Sechidu, and the Kanaba, do, then Camras Star, Luyugone, Gupache, and the Chiki Semyukone de la Tepa Sechidu chair, and then Naigone. Jamru the Pasai, Lunga Yisum Yukone, Kawasagore, and Dele do the same part, which is the Mayan watch, Dar do some and the same things in nature to be a and teaching the things to be a quote Tanya to go, things to be a Tanya to go, or do Shenangazuki, Duce, and Jezada de Negate. Chegorwa, the names are done the nature, and do Chendama, Zamsha said Bajadu, and Ma Chicken, so the Lama Digipa, 2 years, Lamigi, and Gui, le anima chike dusiro chmo de ngodi la mege kusung tu yenden ni chiktin che namba de dusi wo chik da dusi yon da dusi yin yu churu chi yo da che chawa sipsira chi babnga subul ma zu lomba chagir wa dinaji dusi ma chi sunga to semja tham ji lul ma shu ane lugi dikba nga sa dikba chaza da lugi ne na zakare na chaza da so sembe kien hamje jaje luidi waiting ding roju wege rashin joji cha so sampe samda dene an denegi samda da ngai tendi mao bananga juge gewe nyamle che tarche lama chube nyamle che nyamlen tarche yagi nyuba kheba che de sha so ngara ju simjen tamje nyamlen je de nyuba sanjo ko ba lama chube nyamle che tarche begi an nyuba kheba che sha so sampe an denegi nyuba kheba che cha so sampe du chene me ba che go re se che dang juge 디리 맞대 군노 다데 잠도 군노 제데네 잡유 서답 되네야 잡죠 되는 거 주게다 잡죠치는 뒤지 뵙상 해야지 어두스는 삼다야 되다.
I hope then from my explanation now of refuge that it's clear that the Buddha cannot just reach down, pick us up and take us to a happier place. The Buddha can guide us, and our teachers can guide us, and it's for us to apply their teachings repeatedly over a sustained period, and that way transform our minds. So here, in this presentation of the start of the practice, we'll be going for the Mahayana Refuge. I presented in brief the visualization, and I presented in a way that's simple and straightforward. And here what's important in the generation of the Mind of Refuge is that one feels a close and intimate relationship with the objects of our refuge, in particular with our Lama, feeling the real presence of the Lama and of the Buddha. And in terms of our attitude of refuge, our mind of refuge, over time, this also deepens and develops as our various experiences and mental transformation come about, and we gain ever more conviction that his teachings and an example have the ability to protect us from suffering in the way that are presented. Through our own mental development, we attain protection from suffering. So that comes with it as we gain ever more experience. That deepens. So when one is engaging in the meditation, one has developed the visualization. One has done a brief analytical meditation in the recitation of the verse, and then the second verse, and we come to the third verse, and now we're doing the recitation here. And we're doing the recitation here with a particular visualization. And this meditation now is a placement meditation. Prior was analytical, and this now is placement. We're visualizing all the blessings from our Lama, and the blessings are the qualities of his body, speech, and mind flowing into us and all mother sentient beings in the form of nectar and light rays. And the qualities of his body, speech, and mind, in this way, entering us in this way, we imagine that they're purifying all our physical faults, our mental anguishes, and all the negative imprints on our continuum. We imagine this again and again, seeing our body and the body of all sentient beings transformed, becoming clear, bright, and translucent. In this way, through having conviction in the qualities of our Lama and thereby in the blessings that we are receiving, we have confidence that we now, through these blessings, have the capacity to attain our goal of becoming an enlightened being for the sake of others. Through this connection we are creating with all beings around us, we will be able to fulfill this heartfelt aspiration of being of real benefit to others. So here then tonight in the introductory talk, we started to look at the preliminary practices of the Lama Chöpa practice.
다진 만지만에 다 셈게바세 셈게바다네 개발증에 셈게바세 셈게다로시 되는 발수요래 다진 마무티슈야.
So thank you. Then we'll continue next week with the generation of bodhicitta. So thank you very much.